I'm going to take and put down here. So I can see these items are just like 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, I'm going to take the inventory ID number. There we go. And the other thing I want is the value. So let's take that and put that in values. So now I can kind of see how very quickly I can connect to another external data source outside of my workbook. And one thing to note, a couple of things actually, but one is that when you have this pivot table open and it's connected to that data, you're not going to be able to open up that worksheet. So if I went and tried to open that right now, what it would tell me is that it's in use. Another file has it in use. So you would need to close out of this workbook, open up the other one, make the changes, come back in here, but you can refresh your pivot table, and that would update any changes that you made to the source data file. So pretty cool. If I need to see a little bit more data, you can see that just if I was zoomed in and it really kind of ran off the side, I can always close this out. I can bring it back by clicking on the field list button on the Analyzer Options tab, depending on which version you're using. And clicking that field list button will bring that pivot table field back. And then down here, I'm just using my zoom in or zoom out. It's just a really quick way to change the view that you're looking at. All right. So that is connecting to an external data source. The other thing that you want to know about that is that if that data source gets moved, this pivot table it'll still be here, but it will be static, and you won't be able to update it with the current data, and it will actually give you an error and say it can't find the file. So just kind of something to keep in the back of your mind if you do connect to another, say, Excel file. If it does get moved, then that's going to create a problem in your pivot table. And you're not just limited to Excel files. You can also connect to an Access file as well, going through that same process. So we're just going to do that real quick. Insert pivot table. Now, and we're going to take a look at connecting to an Access database, which is Microsoft's part of the Office suite is Access. And some of you out there may have Access databases, but keep in mind that you can also connect to SQL databases as well. So you're not limited there. Again, I'm going to choose an external data source, choose the connection. I'm going to browse for more, and I'm going to go to my folder where I have my Access database, and I'm going to say open. And very similar to the Excel file, it's looking at this saying, okay, there are a lot of tables in here. Which one do you want? So I'm actually going to scroll down because I want the sales information, product sales by employee. And I'm going to select that. Again, it's putting it in here, populating. This time I'm going to pick a new sheet because this is getting a little bit messy. And I'm going to say OK. And again, I have my pivot table, same idea. I can put in the employees. I can put in the order date. And then I can put in the sum of the quantity. Perhaps I want product name here. And then I can go ahead and expand these out. And I can actually use my button up here to expand all of them or collapse all of them. So I can do that right from there as well. And you can see very quickly I was able to connect to that Access database, get the information, and summarize it in a pivot table. So those are just some of the other options that you have. And one other one I'm going to show you is the ability to consolidate data from multiple sources. So in this case, I've got a couple of different sheets, and one of the scenarios I guess I can think of for this is maybe you have data that you're exporting or that you're getting from another source, and the way that it exports is to separate worksheets. So in that case, you might have something similar to this where we're looking at the 2014 amounts and the 2015 revenue amounts for these two companies. So if we get it like this, we could certainly create a summary table, but why not create a pivot table? It's really quick also. So again, you're going to start with that same method, but one of the things that you want to make sure of is that your data is ready for it. And in this case, when you're doing multiple ones, you want to make sure that it's in a rectangle shape. There's no blank row or blank cells in here or rows. And that's why this is month company here, because it's telling me these are the months and these are the companies, rather than to have it on a separate row where you would have blank cells. That's why it's compacted here, is because you need to make sure that it is in a rectangle form. And then what you're going to do, instead of going up to the insert, you're actually going to start the wizard that's going to allow you to do it. And that requires a certain keyboard combination, which is Alt and D and then P. And that's going to bring up the wizard, which is going to let you go through, and it's going to help walk you through creating that. So in this case, the data that I want to analyze is a multiple consolidation. So I'm going to pick more than one range. And I want to create a pivot table. That's great. So I'm going to go next. And I'm actually going to create the page field, so I'm good with that. And I'm going to say next. And then here, this is where I'm actually going to select the ranges that I want to analyze. So I'm going to come out here. You can kind of see the collapse button, which I can use, but I can also just come over here and select it, and it will automatically collapse that for me. So I'm going to select my first range, and then I'm going to say add. And now I'm going to continue to do that with the other ones. So I'm going to come over to consolidate 14. And I'm going to select this area, and I'm going to add that as well. And then I'm going to come down and click Next. And it's just asking me, where do I want to put it? I'm actually going to put it, let's put it on a new one. And then we'll click Finish. And here we are. So that quickly, I'm able to pull in those two. And I'm just going to slide that over. So here's my pivot table for these two sheets for 2014 and 15. The one thing that you might want to do here is you might want to rename these, because when you look at it and you start dragging this around, it doesn't really, it's not real intuitive when you look at rows to see row there. So you might want to change that, and you can do that by selecting it and then coming up in the active field box on your Analyze or your Options tab, and go ahead and rename that field. So in this case, I'm going to call it months, and I'm going to spell it right. Okay, and then this one I'm going to, this column label, I'm going to change the column labels to company. And now when I look over here at the options that I have, now it probably makes a little bit more sense to have company here and to have the months there. And then if I want to start moving things around or switching it, it's going to make a little bit more sense to me as I look at it. All right. So just taking a quick pause here, just to kind of take a breath and get ready to move forward. So we're about halfway through right now. Got a bunch more things to show you. So I'm just going to dive in and take a look at designing some different things that we can do on the pivot table, how we might be able to move that data around or pivot it, and how we can do different designing for our pivot table. All right, so I'm going to just come back to my Pivot 2 sheet, which is a mess right now. So I'm going to go ahead and just, I'm going to zoom this out a little bit, and I'm going to, actually going to delete that out of there, and then I'll bring it up a little bit more. So hopefully everybody can see that. So now I'm going to spend a little bit of time. So I'm going to take the quarter and the year, and I'm actually going to swap these around just by dragging them. And so now I kind of have this view here I'm going to go expand them all so I can, yeah, there we go. So now I'm looking at the different months. I'm looking at the quarters. Let's say I don't really need the months in this case, so I'm going to drag that off. I'm going to remove that. And so now I'm just seeing the quarters and the years. And one of the things that it's kind of it's a preference, but one of the options is to have the subtotals on the same row as the group. And the way that I'm used to seeing my subtotals is at the bottom of my data. So for me, I like to switch that around. And one of the ways I can do that, probably the easiest way on the Design tab,